Yep. Yeah.
Archie, Lord.
Okay,
Don't forget
that's
that.
on the agenda.
Thank you, all right?
Everybody have the agenda? Thanks. Everybody else has the agenda? You ready? You ready, Diana?
Okay, welcome to our Economic Development Committee meeting. Today is June 3rd. Thank you everyone who has sacrificed a beautiful summer afternoon to be here. We truly appreciate it. So let's make introductions. Paola Martinez, Chair.
Michael Pimentel, committee member.
Freddie Perez for me, committee.
Delorny Moore, committee member.
Question mark.
Diana Leonard, Community Associate.
Marshall Strawbridge, I'm here on behalf of the Bronx Economic Development Corporation.
Everyone, I'm Devin Cronshaw from South Bronx Unite.
Avelio Ortiz, I'm a committee member. You call me Archie.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, Madam Chair, Anthony Jordan, District Manager of the Board. Please be reminded that we are recording live on our YouTube channel and also recording on our order for accurate minutes. If you're speaking for the first time today, please make sure you use your first and last name and association for the record. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. Any old business that we have to discuss? Okay, so I'm gonna start with our last meeting. I know many of you were not in the room. So I was really concerned about the attendance in our overall committee meeting. So I just wanted to ask folks, you know, for those of you who have been here for even a longer time than I have been, to reach out to your fellow community board members and ask and encourage people to come. How many more meetings do we have? July?
No, it's last week.
This is the last one until September.
Yes.
Right? So, oh my God. So,
September.
I think, Anthony, it'll be good to know if we could kind of like gather information about what summer plans people have, like other committees, if they're hosting any particular events that we could potentially support or even join. I remember last year, other than the barbecue that the Board of Presidents hosts, were there any other community board organized events during the summer?
None that I know of.
Okay.
We'll have to find out and circle back.
Okay, so we kind of get a break from each other. Okay, well, if that's how we want to keep it, fine. If we wanted to do something, maybe we can ask folks. I mean, for this committee, I don't think that I want to take time from folks because, you know, we all deserve a break. I think we've worked very hard personally, you know, so as part of the committee, but I did want to follow up on the conversation about perhaps reaching out to the businesses that have presented in our committee or those that, you know, we were engaging with, whether it was earlier in the year and they were doing applications for licenses, maybe visiting a couple of businesses, seeing how they're doing, or just like, I don't know, if we wanted to host something, a happy hour, more than happy to help organize something like that. And for those of you that attended, and I think, Delorny, you were there, if I remember correctly, when we went to the site where Phipps is building by the river,
Yes.
that I really would like to revisit that and follow up with them and get the committee members' input. One thing I was able to appreciate last week when I was walking by the river, and I'm pretty sure you've also have been in neighborhoods where people do a lot of activities by the river and it's really fun and it's really nice. That's not the case in Harlem. So I wanted to get your input with regards to how we can engage in a conversation with the folks from Phipps and perhaps identifying other stakeholders to have a better understanding of what the plan will be for the use of that access to the water, and also exploring like what the city as a whole is proposing. right? What are they proposing to kind of like develop that area so that we can identify if there's an opportunity to advocate for something better for our community. In my wildest dreams, I see a stop of the ferry where we can go from there all the way down to Wall Street, as you know they have in other areas. But I think we have to do some research there, and I really would like to have the committee members' support so that if that is an opportunity for us to advocate, along with, you know, FIPS is a great partner for the Bronx. They are a big stakeholder. And I think this is a good opportunity since they're willing to invest so much money there for us to push and get something nice. How many of you have been around like by the Domino water park, whatever,
Yeah.
in Brooklyn, right? Like when you go down there, they have that area where people play volleyball. They have so many cute things, right? And you walk by the Harlem River, and all you see is a lot of garbage, a lot of homeless people using that area. It's so underutilized. So I don't know, maybe sometimes I feel like as a community board, you don't have a lot to say, but I think it's opportunities like that that can really set you up for success. Like even if you're telling the city in 10 years, in 5 years, why not having a stop from the ferry there? Like the NYC ferry has funding and they need to expand. Are you taking us into consideration? So I would love to hear things like that. I would also love to hear from our fellow community committee members. Looking at what we were able to see in this year, were there any projects that were presented here? Or is there anything that gets your attention? Is there anything that we should look into further explore or advocate for?
I do want to say just two things. One, before I forget, that since we're getting a large amount of new members, I think like as an executive board, we should consider like maybe an orientation and a training. Because I do know that when they are assigned to the board, they will they will indicate what committee they're going to be on or what committee they're interested in. So they'll get their committee assignments before September. And that's probably something we should look into in August. And obviously prepare for it in advance.
So do you think we should be doing, and I don't know if we have anything ready, like doing a presentation that talks about all the different committees, or are you saying that we should have something that pertains to our work as a committee?
I haven't really thought about it that far, but I have to be honest, I just want to get it out of my head. But that is something I think it would be nice as a person who started on the community board 2 years ago and just like outside of the like swearing in ceremony, didn't have any contact with the board until my first general board meeting. It would be nice to do something in August to sort of streamline them on a CB1 level and more than what they get from just the PP office. And I think what that looks like, I think we should talk about on an executive level, but that is something that I think is interested in.
And even an intern and even a project for an intern, right? Like to have them put together, collect the materials, and prepare a presentation or a handbook.
Right, yeah, like
That we
something they should have before the new members.
not to create extra work for you, but something that an intern can tackle.
Okay, sure. PowerPoint presentation of anchor institutions, sites, maybe doing something physically in person, et cetera, et cetera. You can check it out, right?
And I literally have no idea. I just want to throw that out of my head. But something that I do think that this committee started, our committee has worked on, but I would like to see in fruition, which is a long-term plan, is a street vendor thing in the Roberto Clemente Plaza. Is something we've talked to Pedro about. DOT got a list of questions they have not yet responded to me about, but that is something that is a bit of a micromanaging thing that I think shouldn't be, that requires a lot of following up on for different parties that I think are all interested and curious to get it done. And that is something that I think we discussed a lot about, is just activating Roberto Clemente Plaza and activating with our street vendors, even if that's 4 or 5 days a week. I know even Pedro acknowledges that would help to have some activation there on a regular basis.
And to serve as a convener, right, for these, for the different stakeholders in that area, because it just keeps getting dirtier and dirtier and dirtier and dirtier, unfortunately. So Anthony, do you have anything to say on that meeting we wanted to do with Christina Contreras? I feel like she's been so busy all over. She just got like an honorary PhD and all of that. But I feel like with Socrates Solano, we have a good ally to follow up. What are your thoughts?
Sure. So I had
Who's Christina?
opportunity. So Christina
From the
Contreras
hospital.
is the executive director or the CEO of Lincoln Hospital.
Why were we meeting with her on this set meeting?
So it was a meeting for the Health and Human Services Committee.
Oh, okay.
And then it was and also to talk about Lincoln's, and then in this committee too to talk about how the impact of their work helps to strengthen businesses, make businesses healthier too. And so I had an opportunity with the new associate executive director of Lincoln Hospital. So he's had a chance to come visit the office and introduce himself. He's been on about definitely less than a month, but having experience with the mayor's office and with other elected official offices, and he is gun ho responsible to working with elected officials and the community board to open up the hospital to every and anything to be able to work in partnership on a lot of initiatives and ideas. The hospital, as you guys probably know, has a major event almost every day that they're doing special events all the time. And so there's a willingness to help during the spring summer break to talk about what are the ideas and partnerships working going forward and planning and working with the community board to create their footprint to making a healthier Montehaven, Fort Morris, and the Melrose section of the Bronx, and also using us as a catalyst to be able to outreach more to strengthen their footprint. They know that they have been known as a major public hospital facility, but they don't want to be known as the facility that only deals with gunshot wounds and others. They would be known as a major public health facility dealing with all kind of issues to help turn around some of the health related issues as it impacts our communities. And so what the new CEO and her team have been doing, and they have been working very hard to make sure that they hold themselves accountable for the history of the hospital, because this doesn't change. I'm the CEO. That wasn't me. That was many years ago. They hold themselves accountable for the history, and they have their set on holding themselves accountable to changing how the hospital, just like any other major anchor institution, has stimulates or spent so many things like economic development, like business, like housing. Because if you don't have a major hospital facility in the area, no one wants to live here. No one wants to open a business here. No one wants to do anything. So they're at home working over the summer with us to help design a plan that helps make the hospital definitely a great institution. And so thank you for making that connection directly to our team, our leadership team, and making that happen, and everybody else's participation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Delaney, I know you've been also gathering information about bills that could be of interest for various committee meetings. So I was wondering, following up on that, on the conversation with the hospital, but also on the conversation with Representative Ocasio-Cortez. When we met with her, we talked about several issues, right? And one of the things that we talked to her about was food. And given federal cuts to food programs as well, I think that it would be pertinent to follow up with her. So I was wondering if you already have some information that you have collected, or perhaps we can work together and highlight some bills that we can just follow up with her office and say, hey, Congresswoman, here are a few things that are of interest for our community, or just to reiterate some of the points that we share with her. I think it would be proper to follow up, but I think it also would be proper to kind of like put together some information that we can share to the members and say, hey, these are some of the things that we think are important for our community. And we can do that together with your committee and with this committee. I think that over the summer, just something simple, even if it's a one page. So by the time September comes, we can have something ready for the committee members. We can have something that we can reach out to the electeds that we met throughout this year and say, hey, we're here again. Remember us, we had this conversation 3 or 4 months ago. So I was wondering if that could be of your interest for us to work together.
So, I think because we start big projects and it's hard to follow up. So outside of the street vendor Roberto Clemente Plaza thing, syringe collection is a huge thing. And so with the district manager, I've set up meetings with all 4 of our state representatives So that's Pulvito Serrano, Chantel, and Septimo, specifically because we've identified that OSHA and like Samaritan Village, Acostia, all of those who get state funding do not participate in syringe collection.
What agency is in charge of providing that funding for those efforts?
So right now, the only people who provide funding for syringe collection is New York State Department of Health under their harm reduction program. And then they just identified one organization which will do syringe collection like can. Like if you pick up a certain amount of syringes, you get like 10 cents or whatever. That they just started, but all of that is exclusively coming from the city. Obviously, Parks and Recs picks up syringes and sanitation picks up syringes, but on a state level, none of the service providers picks up syringes. So like Serrano was like, I thought the syringes were only in the park. I was like, no, they're also right here in Roberto Clemente Plaza. And he was like, send me pictures. And so like, I don't know how you miss that as an elected official. All the time we're yelling about syringe litter. And so I do want to say, even though there's like a lot happening, I think the community, my committee is right now focusing on like trying to make sure that anyone who does harm reduction, who does treatment, drugs and alcohol treatment, has money in their budget for syringe collection. And then we were going to pick up TOPA, which is Tenant Opportunity Purchasing Act, was the second bill that we were going to try to highlight and focus, which allows if you're a tenant, if your building is being sold, you as a tenant will have the first right to buy. And I say that only because there's so much legislation pending and sometimes we feel stretched thin. And I feel like if we can hyper focus on just two, that would, which is already hard. Like the follow-up game is very hard. Like our elected officials can only meet us 9 to 5 virtually, and trying to get my committee members to make those meetings can be difficult. And so I just wanted to just highlight those are the two. So if you're meeting with Lincoln Hospital, Contreras, then I can talk about the syringe collection and what is Lincoln Hospital doing for syringe collection. But like those are the two areas we're in right now, and I already feel overwhelmed by them.
So I wonder if to be more effective, right? Because I know I think it's very important for us to follow up on that meeting with Pedro Suarez. He already said that he wanted to meet, and we were identifying other stakeholders. Let's say that we wanted, because one, they have their responsibilities. They have a budget to do this work. We don't. We have the voice of the community, and I think that as a convener of all of these stakeholders, that's how we can be more effective, right? And also not to upset people and make them feel like we're telling them what they have to do. That's the reality. So, but I'm thinking as I hear you speak, and I think we had a conversation about this. If we were to say, okay, let's focus on the Roberto Clemente Plaza, right? Like, I know the syringes collection is an issue everywhere throughout the South Bronx. But maybe to be more effective, we want to convene the people who are in this area and tell them, hey, these are some of the main concerns that we have, and we would like to work with you and help to see how we can be more effective and kind of like measure some progress, right?
No, I think you're absolutely right. I do want to say, Paola, I do think we should tell them what to do, especially our elected officials. We vote them in, and and we're in the community far more than they are, right? They're traveling from wherever place they legislate from. So yeah, I do think a convening and just kind of staying on top of them and being like, what are the problems?
And identifying like, hey, how big is the problem right now? And how can we work together to kind of like see some progress?
Yes.
And maybe that includes getting landlords in the area involved. I don't know. I'm just thinking about how we can use our resources. Like even Susan, I remember when I was working at Betances, that was a huge issue. They had syringes in the roof, in the staircases, everywhere. And the supers, like they would harm themselves trying to collect all of those syringes. So like, I think at the time we have to think about how to help folks to dispose of those syringes and to collect those syringes in the buildings. Like if you see them at the plaza, imagine what you don't see when you walk through these NYCHA buildings and you walk up the stairs.
That's right.
No, you're completely right, which is why New York City Department of Health has finally identified an organization whose sole job is to train people to collect syringes, and then they give them like 10 cents for their collection. Because they're until that, there was no organization whose sole job was sewage collections. So Satcher, On Point, Boom, their job is harm reduction, Narcan's, getting clean syringes, doing street outreach, and part of that is collecting syringes.
Should we invite these
So-
people to our community?
So they have all been to our community board
To
meetings.
provide the training?
No, the new organization hasn't, or the pilot hasn't started yet, so that work has not been. And yes, when they do come talking about AOC, I was like, why am I talking about this? Okay, AOC's team is very excited also about getting that training and is interested in doing a cleanup at St. Mary's Park with not only CB1, but like with other organizations. And I did have someone like reach out to Kenneth about like when the pilot is gonna launch, and so when we talk about summer things, that could happen.
So I think those are things that we
Because
should
ASC's team does want an ongoing syringe collection cleanup for St. Mary's Park. They do.
If I may say, when it comes to that issue, this has been an ongoing situation actually for a whole lot of years. And I think it's gonna have to be a whole collective effort.
Yes,
Every committee, health and services, municipal services, within our board and outside. I think it shouldn't just be the Department of Health. The sanitation department is gonna have to get involved with that, and the whole lot. I remember years ago, Marty and us from the Immaculate Conception went out, and it was a whole campaign we had going. Cleaning up, starting from St. Mary's Park, and of course, later on throughout the years, Roberto Clemenza Plaza was built, and that has unfortunately been an extension of that situation. And it's like you were saying, there's like garbage around there. I mean, who really utilizes that plaza to even, does anybody actually utilize that and sit down like a normal human being? I'm sorry, the answer is no. Okay?
I mean, there's
If
no
that's how
good
it's going on
businesses.
there.
I mean, I will, like, my personal complaint, that isn't our job, is there's no, like, I don't eat at Checkers. I don't think people even know there's a Checkers over there.
Well, if I buy a slice of pizza, do I sit there in Roberto Clemente Park and eat it? The answer is no.
No.
It's too dangerous, too unsanitary, unhygienic, very bad company. I mean, that whole area has gotten to the point where even for safety reasons, you just are not gonna be a normal person. If you do buy something at Checkers, you should be able to sit there and eat it like a decent human being. That's not what's going on there though. And that's the parallel I'm giving that. So I think it has to be a collective effort, okay? And it's gonna have to be a collective effort on the basis of every single organization getting involved with that, okay? Especially the ones that are situated in that area.
Yeah, I agree. And for time's sake, I do want to just say, I do 100% agree with you. I don't think we're loud enough, surprisingly. For some odd reason, someone in the New York City Department of Health told me they don't know that this is a priority for us. I'm just like, how did you not know this is not a priority for us? I know they recommended that we send our letter to the commissioners. So like I sent our sewage collection letter to our electeds. But someone says I should have sent it to the commissioner, Department of Health, and the commissioner of whatever in Albany. And so I don't know if we're loud enough. And when we meet, and the fact that Sepulveda told me to send him pictures is crazy to me. Like, I thought everybody understood there's a problem right now. And so meeting with the legislative directors and the electeds about this issue specifically will probably allow them to focus, because that is a priority for us. And I think that is something that is feasible. But I agree, ongoing conversations about activating the plaza with street vendors and speaking to our elected officials. And I agree, probably when we have our executive board meeting, talking about like how all of us can talk about it, because I know Marilyn Pena and Health and Human Services, we're constantly talking about it. But Ambrose from Municipal Service maybe should be folded in, and then Economic Development folded in. And so, yeah, we can definitely do that. More
I think
folding
we
in.
should add it as a topic on the next executive committee agenda. We can add that. I would like to add also the topic on engaging with thieves on creating a vision or a preliminary conversation on what the plan is for that part of the river.
We talked about the buildings.
And then seeing if we can create a vision. Going back to the trainings, we had the training with HPD. I think it was productive. I think they, were, there were programs that I was not aware that they had. But we need to kind of identify a better strategy for outreach so that when we are doing these trainings as a committee, we make sure that folks are here, and also if we're doing a training for the larger community, to make sure that as many people as possible benefit from it. If it means that we should do those trainings early in September in the first meeting, because perhaps more people are excited to come. It's the first meeting, da 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 da. We should do that, and also having perhaps an intern or someone working over the summer to help us like put together some notes that we can share with folks. The last thing I wanted to share, not to give us more work, but something that I thought could be exciting was I was walking around the neighborhood the other day. I think I sent you a picture of that, and I saw this plate about Alexander's Alley. It's like a small park not far from here, and it was talking about the Jordan Mott. What is it? Mott? What's Mott? Jordan Mott? And a little bit of the history of who he was and his vision for the neighborhood. And I thought, why don't we organize with the education committee perhaps a walking tour of Mott Haven or any other area that is covering our district. So I thought that could be exciting, something where we as committee members and community board members could invite the community at large and have people sign up for it. And perhaps that can serve as an idea to encourage people to join the community board. And also just to learn about the community. When you look at me, right? When I read that play, oh my God, the guy was a visionary and he invented so many things, like the furnace and a bunch of stuff that we use today. So I am like, all of that happened, and it was like invented by this guy who bought this land in Mott Haven. So I was excited about that. Like,
And don't we have like a history keeper? I think Leslie and Sanji used to be. Don't get me lying, maybe.
Angel
the Bronx
Hernandez.
historian at the
Yeah, there you go.
president's office. Maybe we can tap. I'm happy. Like, if this is something that gets you
Angel
excited,
Hernandez, yeah.
I'm happy to reach out to people and kind of like have them help us with what can be a good route for this tour. I feel like very often when you are in this neighborhood, it's difficult to love it because of all the things that you see. But when you really learn about the history of Mott Haven and other areas in our district, you can be surprised in a good way. So maybe something for the summer.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Okay, so new business, the Brownfield Opportunity Area. Do you want to give us a presentation?
Sure.
Okay, this paper.
Do I need to be recognized or anything?
I don't know. You want to say your name?
Devon
Yes.
and Marshall,
That's right.
Sure.
you have the floor.
Thank you. My name is Marshall Strawbridge. I'm here with Devin Cronshaw from South Bronx Unite. I'm here representing the Bronx Economic Development Corporation. We are the economic development agency for the Bronx Borough President's Office, focusing on small business and neighborhood development through capital access and other community development initiatives. And something that we've partnered with South Bronx Unite on is going after a grant from the state's consolidated funding application for a Brownfield Opportunity Area study. This is a grant for, it's $300,000 in funding. Bronx EDC is committed to an additional $100,000 of empowerment zone funds in order to conduct essentially a land use planning study for the South Bronx, talking about the area basically from the water to the water, south of 149th Street. Parts of that area has been covered by previous BOA studies, but this is a much larger area than previous BOA studies have done, and also that the previous BOA for the South Bronx, led by Sobro, is a number of years old now and could use some updating. And so that's the 1,000 feet up view of it. And like I said, this application is a partnership between Bronx Borough President's Office, Bronx EDC, and South Bronx Unite. who's really been doing a lot of the work for a number of years now, informing the shared values that will guide this plan. And so I'll pass it off to Devin to share a little bit more about any details you want to add to that.
That's great. Thank you, Marshall. And just thank you for having us and having me again to this meeting. Great to see so many familiar faces, folks that are in our local action committee as well. And I think, like Marshall said it well, really the purpose of this grant is to bring resources, technical assistance, and funding to really identify underutilized lots in the neighborhood, whether they're vacant or underutilized. Brownfield Opportunity Area is the name. I think we all are aware that pretty much every lot in the neighborhood is a brownfield, so that doesn't necessarily limit us. But it would really, this funding that Marshall mentioned would allow us to not only identify these strategic sites, but really create and build on the vision that the community has already created for these. So back in, I think, 2013, there was a Power in Place report that was done. Moncho Lopez, which is a board member of South Bronx Unite, as well as the Design Trust, for Public Good, something like that, pulled together essentially all the community-driven planning processes, so sort of the bottom-up community processes. They pulled them into one report. Again, that was back in 2017. So this would allow us to pull that information forward, also to re-engage the community, really create a deep engagement that would renew that vision, and then with that vision really firmly rooted, then identify and build a vision out for these strategic sites. And the idea would be to turn them into community assets, right? Affordable housing, community centers similar to like the Hart Center, and also like opportunities for economic development in the neighborhood. So the outcome, just so you're aware, is to create this community vision, and then as well identify opportunity sites or strategic sites in the neighborhood for redevelopment.
So the question I have is, so studies have been done in the past, I know, and this is going to be an updated study, but when you do a study, then when does that become action, right? Like, I'm for updating a study, but then I think we have studies that are old, but they also do not come into fruition, or did they come into fruition and not all of it? And so I don't want to say I know the answer to that, but I'm just saying, for us to pay for about $400,000 to update and expand a plan, that then goes.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point. And I think, just so you're aware, and I think if folks are aware, that the Mott Haven-Port Morris Community Land Stewards, which is the parent organization of South Bronx Unite, is currently working on the Hart Center, and then the Mott Haven-Port Morris Waterfront Plan. Right, these are very action-oriented and implementing projects. These are the types of projects that we feel we could further identify with this planning process. The idea not only to create a vision, but to identify specific, strategic sites for redevelopment. That's really where it goes hand in hand with not just the vision, but actionable outcomes. But I think it's a really, really important piece. And we want to make sure that we're not just doing another plan for the sake of planning. I mean, this neighborhood, the neighborhood's been planned to death. I mean, so many plans.
Just to add to that, so two things. One is, when you look at the South Bronx, particularly the Mott Haven, Harlem waterfront, I would say almost all of that development, or a lot of it, is made possible by brownfield, an early brownfield opportunity area study, and land use changes in land use recommendations to make that development possible. Part of I wouldn't say the issue, but the reason why I think we're committed to updating that is because a lot of those land use recommendations were focused almost exclusively on housing development. I think that we are interested in and committed to development of affordable housing, but part of our commitment is a mixture of uses, a mixture of land use recommendations. I think about what you shared, Paula, about the Domino Sugar Factory and some of the public spaces that have been added along the Brooklyn waterfront. And those are sorts of things that we want to see come to our Harlem River waterfront. So to that end, there's two measurable outcomes that we're looking for in terms of measuring the performance of this study. One is the degree to which our land use recommendations are taken up by Department of City Planning, and then the other piece is how well this works as a business attraction tool, and not just business attraction, but also development of affordable housing. But I think in terms of what we're trying to do differently is not just see the development of housing, but also seeing folks take advantage of some of the other incentives that come from having an area designated as a state designated brownfield, and taking advantage of those incentives in terms of attracting businesses either from outside of the borough or from within the borough who take the opportunity to expand by in some of the development sites that we identify. So this a big part of what comes out of brownfield opportunity area studies. I think something that will really be relevant to us is like where are the opportunities for adaptive reuse of some of the aging commercial properties that we see in the Mott Haven, Port Morris area, and how can we revitalize those as mixed-use facilities and drivers of economic development, job creation, things of that nature.
I'll just add one other thing to that, and just mentioning the importance, of course, of the community advisory committee. So that's like actually something in the grant application that we need to identify as a community advisory committee. So just knowing that this is going to really go hand in hand with folks that we would love to work with. I mean, I mentioned South Bronx United's local action committee, but as well Community Board 1, right? Like just making sure that we're engaging early and often throughout the process. We will be creating, community advisory committee to work with through the whole process. So.
Are there any particular areas that you're looking at already, like any boundaries and sites?
Yeah, Marshall mentioned the boundaries. It's essentially the Harlem and East River down to the Kill, and then north is East 149th
What is the Kill?
The Bronx Kill. So just essentially the peninsula all the way around south of East 149th Street.
So the waterfront.
That's right.
That's right, but there's a lot more. Everything up to 149th Street though, so not all.
In those, so when you're looking at this, are you also looking at? Are you also looking at the current partners that you could potentially work with?
When you say partners, are you mean like people who would be on the committee,
Not
or like
only
developers?
people, the organizations, right? Because we know that there's some major players in the Bronx, in the South Bronx,
yeah.
right? So are we looking at that
Absolutely.
too? Because to the learner's point, like you're coming up with a plan, right? But you don't want it to just be a plan. You want to say, hey, these are some of the findings we have. How can we make this happen?
And I'm guessing like some examples, right? The Harlem River Greenway, of course, we know is, I guess it's happening now, right? It's like being implemented anyway as we speak. So, and then of course the Mott Haven Port Morris waterfront plan as well. I mean, and there's more, right? But these are the types of studies and planning efforts that we would pull together in sort of the first phase of the BOA plan before, having identified strategic sites. So.
Just talking about the boundaries. Can you explain to me why you stopped at 149th Street? Like as a resident of this block, I'm always curious, especially when you brought up aging commercial property. I think the hub could use a beautiful facelift, especially sit-down restaurants. I do think even though some of these old plans for the South Bronx, I think are in fruition. I mean, it was obviously there was industrial, so in the transition there was a lot of planning, but I don't know why you stopped at 149 and not include the commercial corridor of this area.
So the original and the reason, to be honest, was the Mott Haven Port Morris sort of line of East 149th Street, where the Mott Haven Port Morris Community Land Stewards and South Bronx Unite are really focused. But I think to your point, it's a great point. Why stop right at 149th Street?
I will say, as brownfield areas go, we're already talking about an area that's on the larger side than, like in terms of you take all the brownfield studies that are done within New York City. This is already a pretty big area. So I'm not wedded to the 149th Street line, but we're already talking, for one, we have the natural boundary of the water, and then so it's like just how far north do you go? And 149th Street is like the first major street. And just so, but to your point though, a lot of the hub is still included in that. So the 3rd Avenue south of 149th Street running along the commercial properties right in front of Roberto Clemente. So that's sort of just the thought process to echo what Devin said. But like I said, not wedded to the idea of expanding it, but just want to name that we already are talking about a fairly sizable brownfield area at the moment.
I do want to say I understand it's sizable, but
Yeah.
that water area you're talking about already has pre-existing plans
Yeah.
that are in execution. So
Yeah.
we're layering plans on top of each other.
Yeah.
Where I do think there's certain areas in the South Bronx that are just neglected,
Sure,
and there's no one who's like really like, what are we doing?
sure.
And yet they're high population growing. There's a building right there in Elton. So I do understand there's a large part of it, but there's parts of it that's already accounted for very in great detail. That waterfront area, I've biked it, I've toured it, I know all the plans about it. And so I do think even though it's a large brownfield area, I do think some of it, you guys are not gonna be starting from scratch. You know what I mean? You are building on stuff that is not even that remote in time. And so that's all I wanna say about the boundaries.
That's a good point.
Okay, so what, Freddy?
Yeah, so I just want to ask, how long is this study for?
So it's I think it's a 1 year
1 year
grant
grant
period.
period.
Yeah, 1 year grant period.
Starting when?
So the award would be made July 31st, and I assume that pretty much anytime after July 31st, and as I think we hadn't started the meeting, it's a reimbursement grant, so any expenses after July 31st would be eligible. So it's pretty much August 1st to August 1st.
Who's issuing the grant?
Department of State from New York State.
And is there anybody, is this a grant or an RFP?
So we're replying to I guess it's an RF.
It's an RFP, and
Yes,
it would be to,
it is an
You're
RFP.
assuming you're gonna get this grant, so this is an RFP, am I right?
Correct, yeah, it's
Which
not,
other groups do you know it's applying to?
I think it's a pretty well subscribed grant. They yeah, it's a pretty well subscribed grant.
From what you understand and what you know what's going on out there, besides yourself, how many other groups are applying?
I don't know.
You don't know. Out of the 300,000, can you tell me what percentage of the budget is gonna go to, that you propose, staff, rent, utilities, and what's the other percentage that's going to the actual study?
Yeah, those are very good questions. I wouldn't be able to tell you the breakdown yet. We haven't
You
started
see,
working.
I have
on
a
it.
problem giving my vote for a letter of support.
Yeah.
If you don't have specifics,
Mm.
like for example, this is not personal, okay, this is just,
Of course.
because it's happened before. They give out a grant for $100,000, but $70,000 goes to the CEO or
Yeah.
staff, and then the other 25 goes to, I'm just saying, I'm not saying that's what you're doing. So my specific question was, what's your budget look like? So
Yeah.
you see that, a large portion of that money is going to the actual study,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
And if
So
I can
there's a
respond,
question.
I think it's a very fair question.
Yeah.
The grant's not due for 2 months. Ideally, we would
The
actually
grant's what?
not due for another
The
2 months.
application.
The
Oh,
application.
okay.
So ideally, we would be here next
Yeah.
month for presenting to you.
Okay, see, that'll be good.
Yeah.
Not next month, we won't be here.
Which is why they're here now.
This is-
So- You see,
I'll just, so a couple of things. Well, really just one is when it comes to, I hear what you're saying about a lot of times people.
I've been here 16
I
years.
hear what you're saying. Our practice since under this administration at Bronx CDC is we never do more than 10% for grant administration. Now with
So wait, you're being the fiscal conduit,
we are the fiscal conduit. That's correct.
BOEC.
Yes.
So 20,000, actually 30,000.
30,000.
Okay, that's the fiscal conduit.
Correct.
30,000, the grant is for 300, 10% is.
We're also yes, but we're also committing an additional $100,000. So we're
Apart from,
apart from the $300,000, Bronx CDC will be committing an additional $100,000 to
So,
this project.
does this also apply to any other, let's say they don't win the grant, you're still working with the other groups?
We're only partnering with South Bronx United.
Got
And I don't know how many other programs are applying, but I'm very confident in our chances. One, because of the success that we've had with the state, but we also, we're submitting. It's a partnership between a community-based organization, the Economic Development Corporation,
Mhm.
and the Borough President's Office.
Okay, so 30% I have no problem with,
We're talking 10%.
But then the other 90, I'd like to know how many people are you hiring to do this study? Who are you hiring to do this study? You're coming with people from Staten Island
Mm.
to do a study in the South Bronx, where we have
Yeah.
big unemployment. We have qualified people here that can
Yeah.
work. So those are all questions that I have, And maybe, Madam Chair, if they're doing this, the submission is next month, they should at least give a copy of, not the actual proposal, we don't need to read that, because that's up to you and whoever's reading it to determine whether you qualify or not. But at least we know what are the numbers.
We'd be happy. We'd be happy.
Yeah.
I think that's a valid recommendation.
And I mean, full board is in a few weeks, so that helps. You're gonna be
Yeah,
full
well,
And
board.
then you have to make this presentation before the full board, it'd be nice if you
Have some
had this information and, more clarity into,
And what the process will be,
Yeah.
because to Freddie's point, perhaps one of the biggest expenses is to hire people, right?
Mhm.
And I wonder, since you're already partnering with the Office of the Borough Borough President, the OEDC, what other resources they might have available in terms of experts. And I don't think a lot of money should be going to like a facility or stuff like that, right? So
Yeah, I don't really I anticipate the biggest cost factor to be hiring a firm to produce the brownfield study.
So we're saying we're hiring a firm as opposed to like perhaps hiring organizers or planners from within.
well, I think the reason he says that is because you have to really know how to actually do the study,
Yeah.
and put it in writing, to take measurements. And so
Yes.
we don't have a lot of that kind, but I'm saying there are other jobs available that may fit into this,
That
That's
and
why I wanna know
Yeah.
how much they're spending on hiring that private firm and how much, stuff like that. So then we could take a look at it and see.
And you're talking about a 1-year grant term. So you're
Nobody's
to hire a
doing it for 1
staff
year.
person, it's going to end up being more expensive.
Let me ask you something. What are you don't need to know what firm yet, but what are the firms that are in this business usually? Like, do you have a few in mind already? And to Freddie's point, where do they come from? Are we hiring someone from Boston?
Mm.
Well, we
What do you
that's
usually see?
We've worked with Pratt Center before on
Who?
these types
Pratt
of
Center.
Pratt Center, yeah,
Pratt
these
Center.
types of
Pratt
projects.
Center.
Pratt Center is like an extension of the Pratt Institute.
Oh,
yeah,
yeah,
Princeton.
yeah. So we've worked with them on several different projects. I think they would be top of the list of who we would like to work with. I don't know, Marshall.
We've done work with HRNA, which has done a lot of work in the Bronx. Kyanite Partners, which is run by a woman who used to be a vice president at New York City EDC. We've been flirting with the idea of trying to get Bloomberg Associates to the pro bono consulting firm side of Bloomberg LP. They're very cautious about doing work in New York City, given their relationship to the former mayor. But that's been a conversation. So there are a number of firms that we have in mind, and I mean, I think we share your concern in making sure that it's a organization that's familiar with New York City, familiar with the Bronx specifically. It would be one of the most important criteria.
Is there any way to incorporate into this proposal or project anything that can really like help build some capacity for people in the Bronx that might be interested in this type of projects? Because what I feel is that perhaps we don't have a lot of trained urban planners, but who say we don't have people who are interested in this type of topics and projects? And because the firms always get the jobs, they never even get like an entry-level opportunity to learn and develop expertise.
We're actually already in the practice of doing something like that. So before the meeting started, I was talking about our comprehensive economic development strategy that we're doing in partnership with the Bronx Life Coalition. And so what we've been doing with that is training community members to participate, to basically train them to facilitate our community engagement sessions. So the public engagement sessions that we've held around that economic development strategy have been facilitated by community members who, prior to this initiative, had pretty much zero training in economic development and the shared values
And
of
it
our
was
economic.
paid, and they get paid.
And it's paid.
Yeah, I think we
and so-
would love to see opportunities like that folded into these type of proposals, because I mean, there's a lot of people out there with dreams but never given a chance to.
Yeah.
And so that's what I was gonna ask. Outside of the firm, which is 100% needed, what is the other, like, is there gonna be other local hiring opportunities for community engagement, like I know is happening on the Bronx-wide economic development? Is that going to be happening on a micro level for this project?
So, like, just to make sure that we're applying for a technical assistance grant in order to build out the discrete elements of our proposal. So, I mean, I think you all have shared some excellent ideas that we want to try to incorporate some of that into, but like the concrete details of this proposal haven't been nailed down because I mean we're looking for resources to build that out.
So then a recommendation outside of what my co-committee members have stated is just outside of hiring the firm is what local hiring is going to be done for community outreach. I do know you guys mentioned community advisory board. I don't know if the community advisory board is going to be somehow utilized as a community outreach component as well. And are they going to get a stipend similar to how the community outreach done? But we know there's a firm that is needed, but any opportunity to make sure that we are working and some of that money is distributed on a local South Bronx level is welcome, but I do understand that South Bronx United is also part of it. And so that is
But no, I think
the local agency as
Yeah.
well.
No, I think your point is well taken, and to Marshall's point, I think these are great, very, very important recommendations for us to, as we get closer to the full board meeting later this month, be sure that we've tightened up a little bit of the vision for the grant application. So.
Thank you, Chair. So a couple of questions, and then and I know that this was meant to go on this long, but I wanted to ask about strategy of what the agency was looking for. When we do these type of ball grants, I've known some experience in the community development, especially this work. We're idealing what we would see. Sometimes the study exposes stuff. Sometimes we hope that is looking for things that we hope that are out there to help us be able to do great new things, stimulate economic development using or housing or other things. What are some of the things BOEDC or South Bronx United think that this may highlight for us in our community? Or do we not want to? We want to be surprised.
No, I mean, I think that a lot of the work that South Bronx United has been doing around green space equity, right? Around, and then of course Bronx DC around economic development. I mean, these are, with our local action committee, we've been identifying these types of, underutilized or vacant lots, and really one of the biggest pushes I would say for us so far is green space. I mean, we know how impactful extreme heat is, and not just to in and of itself, but to asthma and other sort of health inequities in the neighborhood. So I think first and foremost, like green space equity is going to be front and center. And then I think other, what has come up a lot time and time again in my work with the Heart Center is like spaces for youth, and youth engagement, but youth development as well. So, I mean, top of the list for sure. Third thing that's come up and is going to be a part of Hearts as well, though, is healthy food and nutrition. So, I think past affordable housing, which we all know is a crisis, is always a crisis. Green space equity, green spaces, economic development, and places for youth, and food and healthy food.
What are we thinking about as far as looking at environmental justice and what we look at? That some of these studies sometimes look at historically how these spaces were used, how they're used now, what possible contaminations already exist or have impacted the community for a long time. So what we need to do in order to stimulate the economic development, housing, other uses is generally environmental justice cleanups or mediations or another. Are we envisioning that because we look at historically, if any of this is known, what these spaces have been were in this area, and what we know the South Bronx has been through for such a long period of time, we want to write those things by identifying, planning, remediation, building, development, whatever it is that happened. Are we looking at that too as a
Absolutely. And the interesting thing about it is all of these issues sort of speak to each other, not just as like abstract ideas, but also in terms of the work that's happening in the South Bronx right now. So when you talk about environmental justice, I think about, I know you're familiar with the Blue Highways initiative that is that the EDC is pushing out, which has serious implications for the South Bronx in particular. And so that has obviously environmental justice implications, but it also is an economic development project as well. And so thinking about how those sorts of investments can be leveraged, what sites exist that can be leveraged that will be more valuable assets given their proximity to these investments in green infrastructure. I get it, even just to pick up on Devin's point about the Heart Center. The Heart Center is a perfect example. It wasn't a part of a BOA, I don't think, right?
No.
It wasn't a part of a BOA, but here you have an asset in a community that was neglected and deteriorating. And the partnership with South Bronx United and New York City Economic Development Corporation are revitalizing that and turning that into a serious community asset. Adaptive reuse is what, so opportunities to replicate that sort of model. And the Heart Center is focused around creating a health center and community space for youth and the arts. And perhaps that focus area isn't what is replicated, but the idea of identifying sites that are underutilized, in part because one, lack of resources to do something with it, but also, and this really gets to the heart of what a BOA is about, is land use restrictions. That's really the meat and potatoes of a BOA, and the outcome. And so that to me is the key outcome that we're aiming for, is identifying opportunities to leverage the assets, whether it be a building, whether it be a vacant lot, whether it be parts of the waterfront, and to turn it into something that can be used for the enjoyment of the residents of the South Bronx, whether that be a business, whether it be open space, whether it be housing.
And that is exactly, and I'm sorry about cutting you off.
No.
I think each of the members have been talking about is about how do we look at something that we unfortunately have not been used. I think the South Bronx is always last in many things. So how we use our waterfront for recreational spaces, where in other spaces we were last to get a children's museum, we were last to get so many things that I think that impacts our community in a real, passionate way. So and one of my members believes that we have to keep quorum, so we have to vote. Sorry if she doesn't mean that for me. But what I wanted to say is that I want to definitely make sure that, as you look at your proposal, how are you being innovative out of the box thinking? I don't want to reimagine your work already. You guys know your gig. So, but I'm just thinking about, as we're talking about the community board and what we're looking at, we want to be first. We want to be impactful. We want to be initiative. We want to be progressive. So I want, I guess, to just emphasize that as you think forward.
Yes. And
Thanks.
how can we use opportunities like these to help firms that are based in the Bronx and to build more capacity in the Bronx? I would say personally that, let's try to get the money. So for it to be invested somewhere else, it'd rather be invested here in the Bronx. But if we could do that, as Freddie said, right, it would be best. So we have to take a vote. I know some folks have to go. Why don't we take a vote?
What's the motion?
Who wants to make a motion?
Well, what exactly are we voting on?
To provide a letter of recommendation so that they can submit
Right.
it along with their application for the funding.
So the assets are seeking a resolution for letter of support for the proposed Brownfield Opportunity Board grant application, the New York State Department of State. The application will be co-led by the Mount Haven Port Morris Community Land Stewards and the Bronx EDC. Is there a motion?
Freddie, can you make a motion?
I just did. What Anthony said. I make a motion to provide a letter of support for the Economic Development Corporation, I guess like BOEDC,
Sure.
and the Land Trust, Mount Haven Port Morris, and it's in what's the name of South Bronx United. The motion is to approve a letter of support from the board, okay, for the submission of their grant.
Yes.
I, Doreen Moore, and second the motion.
Discussion on the motion?
Are we gonna, so discussion on the motion is, are we making an amendment because at full board, they're supposed to come up with at least just a rough draft of budget breakdown? Is that what you were asking for, Freddie?
It's a contingency, the letter, you don't have to make a, amendment, but with the understanding that during the full board meeting, they will supply us and provide us with a budget.
Yeah, and I do want to say, because I know we list all the organizations, if I do want the lines of boundary to be extended, and I think when Powell is saying things that could help, it could also help our bid director, which half of him is already there if you end at 149, but the other half of his line of demarcation is not there. But I think people who could utilize this and who can build off of this is our bid director. So I would love his whole district, for lack of a better term, to be part of the lines of boundary.
Maybe is it because you have to be within the community board one,
But he needs it. See, so
I think the cost is probably.
Pedro's part of
it's community board one.
Pedro's community board. Right?
Right, but after from 149th Street, let's say, 149 goes from the water.
Yeah.
All the way to Southern Boulevard.
Is that how far you're going? Southern Boulevard?
It goes all the way to.
We're going all the way to the
From the
water. We're
water-
going from the water.
From
That's
the
what I
water.
think.
Going, right, so 149 across, yeah, Hunts Point area.
The entire Bronx
Yeah,
south of
so
149th.
that'll run into planning board two if you go on the other side, am I right?
Yeah.
So I'm just, when she says expand something, when they don't want to, then they have to go to planning board two if you're in Hunts Point area. So I don't know where your cutoff is when you say 149.
Yeah, that's true. I don't
It's
understand
the
it.
entire street,
It's a,
but it goes down to the water.
Right, so.
So they're already in CB2 then.
I think part of it cuts down a little bit and it stays on CD1.
Yeah.
So you're completely in CB1.
Yeah.
Okay, so then Pedro's the bid is
Everyone.
the
Pedro
CB1.
is-
So there's a part of that goes north. So we can look at going north on a part of 140.
Yeah, because Pedro stops at 153.
On Third Avenue.
Yeah, Third Ave. He stops at 153. He's like, it's not even the entire corridor.
we did just get done with a study for Pedro though.
Oh, we did?
And his
Okay, I didn't
bid,
know.
We did just.
I didn't know.
With the Economic Development Administration.
And
Okay.
can you
So
share
he-
the
See?
Fort Morris waterfront development proposal or plan? Can you
Yeah,
share that?
Of course.
So we can share with the board?
Yes.
So there's already plans on plans.
So are you seconding his motion from clearly how it is, or
Yes.
you can't, so you have to second it as he said it, not, you can't add another amendment to it. Yes, that's he agrees to modify his original.
There's no amendment.
There's
So
no,
it's
no,
not
no,
like you're doing it
no,
as
no.
is.
Yeah, I was just saying discussion
Okay.
because there's no final things anyways.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Any abstentions? Okay, well, my friends, I think this is the last
Thank you
topic we have to
so
discuss.
much.
Expect an email from me. A motion to adjourn the meeting. All in favor?
I make a motion.
I second.
Meeting adjourned. I'm gonna be reaching out to people to come up with some